The quiet hum of the A380's engines was a soothing balm, a familiar symphony that accompanied Zara Monroe's relentless pursuit of financial excellence. Nestled into the expansive luxury of her first-class seat on Aurelia Airlines, she felt a fleeting sense of peace, a rare interlude between high-stakes negotiations and intricate market analyses. The cabin, a sanctuary of polished chrome and rich, supple leather, felt like an extension of her own meticulously ordered world. Her suit, a bespoke creation in the deepest shade of charcoal, was an almost invisible statement, reflecting her philosophy that true influence resided not in ostentation, but in quiet, undeniable competence. A flight attendant, her smile impeccably trained, glided towards Zara, extending a crystal flute filled with sparkling water. "Welcome aboard, Miss Monroe," she intoned, her voice carrying a faint, almost imperceptible inflection. It wasn't a question, precisely, but an unspoken query, her gaze lingering for a fraction too long on Zara's understated carry-on, a sleek leather tote devoid of any overt branding. Zara felt the familiar scrutiny, the fleeting mental calculation that often accompanied her presence in exclusive spaces. Another points upgrade? Perhaps a lucky lottery winner? The assumption, subtly woven into the attendant's polite demeanor, was a familiar companion on her journey through a world still grappling with the visual representation of success. Zara offered a small, knowing smile, accepting the glass. "Just Zara, thank you." She harbored no desire to elaborate, no need to justify her right to occupy this space. Her entire professional life had been a testament to proving her worth, not to the passing scrutiny of strangers, but to the unforgiving algorithms of the market and the discerning eyes of global investors. The battles for respect were won in the complex interplay of financial data and strategic foresight, not through outward displays of wealth. Across the aisle, a man of ample girth in a particularly loud houndstooth blazer, his complexion florid from what appeared to be an early start on the flight's complimentary spirits, chuckled boisterously. He leaned conspiratorially towards his equally portly companion, Gerald, his voice cutting through the cabin's hushed atmosphere. "Net worth seating. Eh, Gerald? Better hope your points don't run out before we hit cruising altitude." His eyes, small and calculating, darted towards Zara, a condescending smirk playing on his lips, before he returned his attention to Gerald, seemingly oblivious to the quiet dignity that radiated from Zara's corner. Gerald, a mirror image of his friend and his jovial excess, joined in the booming laughter, their mirth momentarily shattering the cabin's serene ambiance before being swallowed by its plush sound dampening. Zara's expression remained unperturbed. A faint ripple of irritation, perhaps, stirred deep within her, a fleeting acknowledgement of the petty ignorance she often encountered. But it was swiftly quelled, subsumed by the disciplined focus that had defined her rise to the apex of global finance. She had long ago mastered the art of filtering out such trivialities, allowing them to dissipate harmlessly, like mist against a mountain. Her mind was already on the intricate dance of algorithms and global economics, the quarterly reports awaiting her meticulous review. The airline, with its luxurious amenities and attentive staff, was merely a vehicle, a seamless conduit transporting her from one high-stakes engagement to another. Her world revolved around the quiet power of numbers, the silent language of markets, and the profound responsibility of guiding billions of dollars through treacherous economic currents. Barely 10 minutes later, just as the last murmurs of pre-flight announcements faded and the cabin door hissed shut, an unexpected surge of activity near the boarding gate drew the collective attention of the first-class passengers. A tall, impeccably tailored figure, his silver hair neatly combed and his blue eyes sharp with an almost predatory intelligence, strode with an unmistakable air of authority down the aisle. He was accompanied by two visibly nervous flight attendants and, to the astonishment of all, the airline's chief pilot, his uniform immaculate, his posture rigidly deferential. Bartholomew Finch, the boisterous man in houndstooth, a self-proclaimed expert in the subtle hierarchies of power, straightened abruptly in his seat, a look of eager recognition blossoming on his face. "By Jove, Gerald," he whispered, his voice thick with excitement. "That's Julian Thorne, the CEO of Aurelia Holdings himself. What in blazes is he doing on a commercial flight, and in economy, by the looks of it? And unannounced inspection, perhaps? Julian Thorne, the legendary titan of industry, the architect behind the sprawling empire of Aurelia Holdings, the very parent company of Aurelia Airlines, did not pause to acknowledge the speculative chaos. Whispers or the respectful nods of his employees. His gaze, piercing and analytical, swept across the first-class cabin, a silent search pattern that seemed to bypass the obvious and delve into the unseen. Then, with an almost imperceptible tremor of recognition, his eyes landed on Zara. A spark of genuine respect, followed by an expression of profound deference, transformed his austere features, softening the sharp lines that usually defined his public persona. He quickened his pace, his stride purposeful and unhesitating, directly towards Zara's seat. Bartholomew Finch's jaw, which had moments ago been chattering with excited speculation, went slack, his earlier smirk vanishing as if wiped clean by an invisible hand. Gerald, equally dumbfounded, simply stared, a half-eaten gourmet pastry frozen precariously close to his open mouth. Julian Thorne stopped directly beside Zara, his imposing figure casting a momentary shadow over her quiet corner of the cabin. His voice, usually reserved and imbued with an iron command, took on a tone of genuine deference, bordering on reverence. "Ms. Monroe, it is an absolute honor," he declared, extending a hand, his grip firm and respectful. "Julian Thorne, I must apologize for this rather abrupt intrusion. Though when I saw your name on the manifest, I simply could not let the opportunity pass to greet you personally before our departure." Zara, her composure unwavering, met his gaze, a faint, knowing smile playing on her lips. She shook his hand, her grip confident and assured, betraying no surprise. "Mr. Thorne, the pleasure is entirely mine." Thorne's smile broadened, a rare, genuine expression that seemed to warm the air around him. He gestured expansively around the opulent cabin, encompassing not just the luxurious seats, but the very essence of the airline itself. "Ms. Monroe, your firm, Ascend Capital, runs the fund that essentially underwrites this entire airline. More accurately, you, through your unparalleled vision and strategic acumen, effectively own a significant portion of the holding company that owns this airline. Your continued trust in Aurelia Holdings, and indeed, your invaluable strategic guidance, has been the bedrock of our recent successes. Frankly, Mr. Monroe, we wouldn't be flying quite so high without your firm's astute backing." The first-class cabin, moments ago alive with the subtle hum of engines and hushed conversations, fell into an almost absolute silence. The flight attendants, who had earlier assessed Zara with quiet skepticism, now stood frozen, their eyes wide with a mixture of dawning realization and outright shock. Bartholomew Finch, his face now a sickly shade of ashen white, seemed to visibly shrink into his seat, his earlier chuckle hanging in the air, a bitter, mortifying echo. Gerald, his pastry long forgotten, simply gaped, his eyes darting wildly between Zara, Julian Thorne, and the now pale contorted features of his companion. The phrase, net worth seating, had just taken on an entirely new, deeply humiliating meaning. Julian Thorne, seemingly oblivious to the seismic ripple of stunned silence he had caused, continued, his voice resonating with genuine admiration and a hint of almost childlike enthusiasm. "I had genuinely hoped to catch you before departure to discuss a few fascinating emerging market opportunities, perhaps over a quiet lunch in the city next week. Your insights, Miss Monroe, are quite frankly invaluable to our forward planning in strategic investments." End quote. Zara considered his offer, a faint flicker of amusement dancing in her eyes as she subtly acknowledged the array of shocked and contorted faces around them. "Mr. Thorne, I would be delighted. My assistant will be in touch with your office to coordinate a suitable time and venue." "Excellent, excellent." Thorne beamed, his face alight with satisfaction. "And perhaps," he added, a slight, almost hesitant note entering his voice, as if he were about to ask for an extraordinary favor. "If it's not too much to ask, Miss Monroe, given the truly extraordinary impact your fund has had on Aurelia, and indeed, on my personal legacy as a businessman, Would you by any chance consider gracing me, pray, with your autograph? My youngest daughter, Clara, is a budding finance enthusiast, and she absolutely looks up to you immensely. She'd be utterly thrilled." He produced a small, elegant leather-bound notebook and a fine-tipped pen from his inner jacket pocket, his expression one of earnest hope, a rare vulnerability in a man of his formidable stature. The request, coming from a figure as revered and powerful as Julian Thorne, was utterly unprecedented, a clear and undeniable sign of the profound respect and admiration he held for Zara Monroe. It transcended mere politeness, becoming a deeply personal acknowledgement of her unparalleled influence and a quiet testament to her exceptional success. Zara's smile softened, a genuine warmth radiating from her eyes. This was a request born not of celebrity worship, but of sincere admiration from a peer, and for a child who saw in her a beacon of aspiration. It was a recognition of the quiet, unwavering dedication, the relentless pursuit of excellence, and the intellectual prowess that had defined every step of her remarkable career. She took the pen, her signature a fluid, elegant script, each curve and line a testament to the precision, clarity, and unshakable conviction that governed her every strategic decision. The act, simple in its execution, resonated with the weight of its significance. As she gracefully handed the notebook back to a beaming Julian Thorne, the silence in the first-class cabin was not just deafening, but almost reverent. Bartholomew Finch and Gerald exchanged a look of profound, mortified understanding. The flippant, net-worth-seeding quip now hung in the air, a bitter, ironic jest that had not only backfired spectacularly, but had detonated a career-threatening explosion of social awkwardness. Julian Thorne, clutching the signed notebook as if it were a priceless relic, offered one last respectful nod to Zara, his eyes still shining with genuine admiration, before excusing himself. To the utter astonishment of every passenger, he then proceeded past the first-class section and disappeared into the economy cabin, presumably to his own, far less opulent seat. He had boarded this exclusive, early morning flight purely to acknowledge Zara Monroe, a silent, powerful testament to her unparalleled influence and the profound, almost humbling respect she commanded in the highest echelons of the global financial world. As the plane began its gentle, almost imperceptible taxiing towards the runway, Zara leaned back into the plush comfort of her seat, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. The incident was a fleeting blip, a momentary ripple in the vast, complex ocean of her life's work. Her gaze drifted out the panoramic window, watching the ground crew, tiny figures meticulously preparing the massive aircraft for flight. Each intricate detail, each precise movement, mirrored the meticulous planning and strategic execution that defined her own approach to managing the multi-billion-dollar fund under her stewardship. She thought of the arduous early days, the grueling hours spent hunched over financial models, the relentless pursuit of knowledge in a field that often felt like an impenetrable, male-dominated fortress. There were the countless rejections, the subtle condescension masked as constructive criticism, the pervasive need to consistently prove her intelligence and competence in a world where preconceived notions often outweighed objective merit. She vividly recalled the sting of being overlooked for pivotal opportunities, the quiet, unseen battles fought in silent boardrooms, and the unwavering conviction deep within her that her abilities, her unique perspective, would, eventually, speak for themselves, resonating louder than any doubt. Her journey, she reflected, hadn't been about the accumulation of personal wealth for the sake of lavish, outward displays. It was about building an empire of influence, of creating meaningful opportunities for others, and of undeniably proving that talent, tenacity, and an unshakable moral compass knew no boundaries of gender or race. The fund she managed, Ascend Capital, wasn't just a vast collection of assets. It was a living testament to a deeply held philosophy, a belief in strategic, long-term growth, and an unwavering commitment to ethical, sustainable investing. Aurelia Holdings was merely one of many astonishing success stories under her astute purview, a vibrant testament to the meticulous research, the visionary leadership, and the tireless dedication of her exceptional team. Zara closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, a particular incident from her nascent career flashing through her mind. She had presented a groundbreaking, unconventional investment strategy to a panel of seasoned, overtly skeptical executives. Their faces, etched with decades of traditional thinking and entrenched biases, had mirrored the initial skepticism she'd encountered in the flight attendant's eyes just moments ago. They had challenged every premise, questioned every projection, their voices laced with a dismissive, almost patronizing tone. But Zara, armed not just with data, but with an unshakable conviction, an almost intuitive understanding of intricate market dynamics, and an eloquent command of her subject, had systematically, calmly, and meticulously dismantled every single objection. By the end of her comprehensive presentation, the initial skepticism had not just turned to grudging respect, but to outright, albeit reluctant, admiration. That seminal day, she realized, she hadn't merely won an investment. She had won a crucial battle for recognition, for legitimacy, for her very presence in that exclusive world. The hum of the engines grew steadily louder, a deep, reassuring thrum that vibrated gently through the cabin, signaling their imminent departure. She opened her sleek, ultra-thin laptop, the screen glowing softly in the subdued cabin light. Complex numbers, intricate charts, and sophisticated algorithms filled the display, a language only a select few truly understood, a testament to the rarefied world she inhabited. This, she affirmed to herself, was her true domain, the intricate, perpetually evolving dance of global finance, where billions were made or lost with a single, well-timed, meticulously calculated decision. The petty judgments of a few strangers on an airplane, however mortifying for them, faded into utter insignificance against the colossal backdrop of the financial cosmos she navigated daily with such quiet mastery. Meanwhile, across the aisle, Bartholomew Finch, the man in the garish houndstooth suit, sat in a state of utter, agonizing mortification. His face, normally a cheerful, ruddy red, was now a blotchy, mottled purple, a roadmap of his inner turmoil. He fumbled clumsily with his seatbelt, his hands trembling slightly, betraying the seismic tremor of humiliation rocking his composure. "Gerald," he whispered, his voice a strained, hoarse rasp, barely audible above the rising engine noise. Did you just witness that? Julian Thorne? The Julian Thorne asking for her autograph? Good heavens. I'm ruined!" "Ah." Gerald, equally stunned and visibly uncomfortable, could only nod mutely, his eyes still wide with disbelief. I honestly thought she was just, an upgrade. Maybe a lottery winner or something." His voice trailed off, the implicit bias woven into his earlier assumption now painfully, glaringly clear, a stark mirror reflecting his own ingrained prejudices. Bartholomew groaned, burying his face in his hands, his fingers digging into his scalp as if to physically obliterate the memory. "I practically insulted her. Net worth seeding," I said. "Oh, Bartholomew, you utter colossal imbecile. Do you comprehend what this means for my upcoming funding round with Aurelia? They hold the purse strings for half the venture capital flowing through the city. My entire quarter, my year, perhaps my career, hinges on their investment." His earlier self-assured swagger had completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, suffocating dread that settled deep in the pit of his stomach, curdling his breakfast. He pictured the looming board meeting, the critical, discerning glances from his own investors, and the sudden, terrifying, stomach-lurching realization that he had just profoundly alienated a person of unimaginable influence, a true titan operating in the shadows. He racked his brain, desperately trying to recall if Zara Monroe's name had ever, even peripherally, crossed his desk. He prided himself, foolishly perhaps, on knowing all the major players, especially within the intricate web of investment funds that fueled the city's economy. But Zara Monroe and her firm, Ascend Capital, operated on a fundamentally different plane, a stratum of quiet, monumental success that whispered of profound returns rather than shouting from the glossy pages of financial magazines. Ascend Capital rarely sought public attention, preferring, with a quiet, almost disdainful elegance, to let their astonishing, consistent returns speak for themselves. Their formidable reputation was built on strategic genius, an almost prescient ability to identify undervalued assets, to foresee burgeoning markets, and to navigate complex regulatory landscapes with uncanny precision. Bartholomew had always, rigidly, associated such colossal funds, such undisputed financial might, with older, established male figures. Men who had clawed their way to the very top through decades of cutthroat deals, ruthless acquisitions, and often questionable ethics. The very idea that a woman, and a young black woman at that, could be at the absolute helm of such a powerful, influential entity, quietly orchestrating the fortunes of corporate giants like Aurelia Holdings, had simply could not, compute within the rigid, prejudiced confines of his traditional worldview. His chuckle, earlier so smug and self-satisfied, now echoed in his ears like a grim, relentless death knell for his own precarious financial aspirations. He felt a chilling certainty that this single, thoughtless remark would haunt him for years to come. The plane began its powerful surge down the runway, the roar of the engines growing exponentially, pushing them gently but firmly back into their seats. Zara, already deeply immersed in her work, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with a focused intensity, barely registered the subtle shift in cabin atmosphere, the palpable tension that had replaced the earlier casual banter. She was already strategizing, her brilliant mind effortlessly running through a myriad of complex permutations of global market trends, geopolitical shifts, and groundbreaking technological advancements. The world of high finance was a constantly evolving, intricate chess game, and Zara Monroe was not merely a player. She was a grandmaster, always several calculated moves ahead, anticipating, adapting, ultimately conquering. Hours later, as the in-flight meal service commenced, the initial flight attendant, the one who had first greeted Zara with quiet, almost imperceptible skepticism, approached her seat with a renewed, almost, reverent deference. Her smile was no longer merely practiced. It was genuine, infused with a palpable hint of awe. Her cheeks slightly flushed. "Ms. Monroe," she began, her voice softer than before, imbued with a newfound respect. "May I offer you anything specifically?" The chef prepared a very special selection for Mr. Thorne, and he insisted, quite emphatically, that we offer it to you first, as a token of his utmost regard. Zara looked up from her laptop, a slight, almost imperceptible arch to her brow, acknowledging the gesture. "That's very kind, thank you. Just the salmon, please, and a still water, if you don't mind." She wasn't seeking preferential treatment, nor did she bask in its glow, but she certainly appreciated the tangible shift in attitude, the almost palpable recognition of her true standing. It was a small, quiet victory, a subtle, yet deeply satisfying affirmation of her presence, not as a mere passenger on points, but as the silent, powerful architect of the very airline's prosperity. The attendant nodded, her movements now imbued with a newfound urgency, eager to please. "Of course, Miss Monroe, right away." She scurried off, moving with a speed and attentiveness that had been noticeably absent during her earlier interactions. Bartholomew watched the entire exchange from his seat, a fresh, scorching wave of humiliation washing over him, intensified by the quiet competence radiating from Zara's corner. He had just endured a subtle, yet stinging lecture from Gerald about the inherent dangers of making baseless assumptions. A lecture delivered with a barely suppressed, "I told you so" smugness that grated on his already frayed nerves. Bartholomew knew with a sinking certainty that he had to act, to somehow mitigate the egregious damage he had inflicted upon his own reputation, and more importantly, his financial prospects. But how, he agonizingly pondered, does one apologize to someone whose multi-billion-dollar fund effectively controls a significant portion of your company's financial future, especially when you've publicly and foolishly humiliated yourself in front of them? He considered the possibility of approaching Zara directly, perhaps even drafting a formal, heartfelt apology. But the mere thought of facing her calm, discerning gaze, of meeting her unwavering composure, filled him with a potent, incapacitating cocktail of shame, fear, and utter inadequacy. He vividly imagined her quiet, polite dismissal, a fate far, far worse than an outright scolding. A public dressing down would at least provide some form of catharsis. Her quiet disinterest would signify a complete lack of regard, a far more chilling prospect. He briefly entertained the idea of sending a discreet note, perhaps accompanied by a bottle of the finest, most expensive champagne the flight offered. But then he remembered the stark simplicity of her elegant carry-on, the unostentatious, almost minimalist elegance of her suit. Zara Monroe didn't strike him as the type to be swayed by superficial gestures, by trinkets or fleeting displays of extravagance. Her respect, he realized with a fresh wave of despair, was earned through merit, through intellectual rigor, through proven results, not bought with material offerings. He spent the remainder of the agonizingly long flight in a state of agitated, debilitating self-recrimination, his attempts to work on his own crucial business presentations proving utterly futile. Every time his gaze strayed, his eyes were inevitably drawn to Zara's serene profile, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with an almost hypnotic grace. Seemingly utterly oblivious to the profound seismic shift her quiet presence had caused within the confines of the cabin. She was a force of nature, a quiet, irresistible storm of intellect and influence, and he, Bartholomew Finch, had blundered directly and catastrophically into her path, his ill-conceived mockery turning into a bitter prophecy of his own undoing. He felt a desperate urge to disappear, to melt into the luxurious seat, to somehow rewind time and erase his monumental error. As the plane finally began its gradual descent, the usual pre-landing chatter resumed its muted rhythm, but it was conspicuously subdued, infused with an almost palpable atmosphere of newfound respect, bordering on UW. The other passengers, having borne witness to the extraordinary, humbling exchange, cast discreet, curious glances in Zara's direction. Her aura had undeniably changed, transformed from an unknown, unassuming passenger to an almost mythical figure, a quiet, formidable powerhouse who held the intricate reins of immense wealth and profound influence, her presence now radiating a silent, undeniable power. When the aircraft finally touched down, its tires kissing the runway with a gentle thud, Zara meticulously closed her laptop, her movements precise and efficient, gathering her few belongings with practiced ease. She was among the very first to disembark, a silent testament to her unwavering efficiency and her focus on the next task at hand. As she stepped into the bustling, vibrant energy of the airport terminal, the world seemed to shift seamlessly back into its usual, relentless pace. The incident on the plane, while briefly amusing in its dramatic irony, was already receding into the background of her extraordinary mind, replaced by the pressing, urgent demands of her meticulously planned schedule. Julian Thorne, a man whose time was measured in millions, was waiting patiently at the gate, his imposing figure a beacon of authority amidst the swirling crowds. He offered her another deferential nod as she passed, his face etched with genuine respect. "Thank you again, Ms. Monroe," he said, his voice carrying clearly above the din, a genuine smile still gracing his lips. "Looking forward immensely to that lunch and to your invaluable insights." "As am I, Mr. Thorne," Zara replied, her voice calm and clear, her stride unwavering. She moved through the terminal with purposeful determination, her gait confident, the very embodiment of a woman accustomed to navigating complex, high-stakes environments with unwavering self-possession and an innate understanding of the intricate dance of power. The world, she knew, was her oyster, not because of inherited wealth or the ephemeral privileges of societal connections, but because of an extraordinary mind, an unyielding spirit forged in the fires of adversity, and a singular, unwavering vision that had propelled her, against all odds, to the absolute pinnacle of the global financial world. Bartholomew Finch, disembarking several agonizing minutes later, his face still a mottled mess of regret and humiliation, frantically scanned the departing crowds, desperately hoping to catch Zara's eye, to offer some stammering, inadequate apology. But she was already gone, a fleeting glimpse of her elegant silhouette disappearing into the vast anonymous throng, leaving him to confront the bitter, lingering taste of his own prejudice and the unsettling, deeply humbling realization that he had profoundly and irrevocably underestimated the quiet, Formidable power of das. Zara Monroe, the woman who commanded respect not with noise or ostentation, but with sheer, unadulterated, undeniable brilliance. His journey, far from being a mere business trip, had been a far more transformative and punishing experience than he could have ever imagined, a stark, unforgettable lesson in the profound folly of judging a book, or a powerful, visionary CEO, by its utterly misleading cover. The searing memory of Julian Thorne, the titan of industry, humbly asking for her autograph, would forever serve as a humiliating, yet ultimately invaluable, reminder of that unforgettable flight. The repercussions for Bartholomew, though not immediate, were swift and insidious. News, especially concerning the upper echelons of finance, traveled at the speed of light, often amplified by exaggeration. While the specific details of his mortifying gaffe might not have been widely broadcast, the perception that he had somehow offended a key player in the Aurelia Holdings orbit began to subtly circulate. Meetings that had once been easily scheduled now required persistent follow-ups. Emails went unanswered for unusually long periods, and the enthusiastic warmth that usually greeted his calls from venture capitalists began to cool into professional politeness, thinly veiling a distinct lack of interest. Gerald, his earlier complicity now transformed into a smug, cautionary posture, became increasingly distant. Their golf games, once a weekly ritual of camaraderie and networking, dwindled to infrequent, awkward encounters. Gerald, ever the opportunist, seemed to grasp the delicate shift in power dynamics, understanding that aligning himself with Bartholomew's fading star was no longer strategically advantageous. He began to subtly cultivate connections with other emerging players, carefully distancing himself from the man who had so publicly demonstrated his lack of discernment. Bartholomew's attempts to secure the next crucial funding round for his own venture, a promising but capital-intensive tech startup, hit unforeseen snags. Aurelia Holdings, a vital potential investor and cornerstone of the local venture capital landscape, became a wall of polite but firm rejections. His calls to their investment division were met with carefully worded excuses, deferrals, and ultimately, silence. He tried to pull strings, leverage old connections, but the subtle chill was pervasive. The unwritten rules of the game were clear. One did not disrespect those who held the true power, especially when that power was quietly wielded by someone like Zara Monroe. He desperately sought a direct line to Julian Thorne, hoping for an opportunity to offer a groveling apology, to explain, to somehow undo the damage. But Thorne was, as always, unreachable, a fortress of gatekeepers protecting his precious time. Bartholomew even tried to send a formal, profusely apologetic letter to Zara Monroe's office at Ascend Capital, detailing his regret and acknowledging his profound error in judgment. The letter was received, he was informed, but no response ever materialized. Her silence was more chilling than any angry rebuke, a testament to her quiet authority. It conveyed a message of absolute indifference, a dismissal that signaled he simply wasn't worth her time or energy, a truly devastating blow to his ego and his career. Zara, meanwhile, was indeed aware of Bartholomew's desperate overtures. Her assistant, a remarkably astute and discreet individual named Lena, had flagged the apologetic email and the subsequent follow-up calls. Zara read Bartholomew's contrite words with a detached amusement, a mild curiosity, but no genuine emotional response. She held no animosity, only a quiet understanding that such encounters were often necessary lessons for those who operated on superficial judgments. She had long ago learned that holding on to grudges was a waste of valuable mental energy better spent analyzing market trends or cultivating impactful relationships. Her time was finite, her focus absolute. Her lunch with Julian Thorne, a week later, was a masterclass in strategic conversation. They met in a private dining room at a discreet, unostentatious club, a venue chosen for its quiet elegance rather than its flashy reputation. Thorne was effusive in his praise, not just for Ascend Capital's financial contributions, but for Zara's visionary approach to investment. He spoke of her firm's unique ability to identify nascent technologies and social enterprises that others overlooked, transforming them into lucrative, sustainable ventures. Ms. Monroe. Thorne leaned forward, his voice earnest. Your team's foresight in the green energy sector, for instance, has not only yielded phenomenal returns for Aurelia, but it has also positioned us as a leader in sustainable investing. It's more than just profits, isn't it? It's about shaping the future, about aligning capital with progress. Zara nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. Indeed, Mr. Thorne, at Ascend Capital, we believe true wealth is measured not just in quarterly earnings, but in long-term impact. We look for companies with strong fundamentals, yes, but also those with a clear pathway to positive societal contribution. It's a holistic approach, where financial returns are intertwined with ethical responsibility. She explained her firm's rigorous due diligence process, which included not just financial audits, but also comprehensive assessments of environmental, social, and governance (ESG) factors. They sought out companies that prioritized fair labor practices, minimized their environmental footprint, and maintained transparent governance structures. This wasn't merely a trend for Ascend. It was a foundational principle, a deeply held conviction that had been instilled in Zara from her earliest days in finance. She recalled the countless evenings spent debating these very concepts with her mentor, a brilliant but notoriously tough economist who had seen the inherent flaws in purely profit-driven models. He had pushed her, challenged her assumptions, and ultimately helped her forge the unique investment philosophy that defined Ascend Capital. It was a philosophy born out of a desire to create not just wealth, but enduring value, to leave a positive mark on the world. Thorne listened intently, occasionally interjecting with insightful questions, his admiration for Zara clearly evident. He spoke of new opportunities in emerging African markets, areas that many traditional firms still viewed with cautious skepticism. Zara, however, had long recognized the immense, untapped potential in these regions, having personally overseen several successful investments there. She shared her insights on navigating complex regulatory landscapes, understanding local cultural nuances, and identifying resilient, innovative entrepreneurs who were building robust economies from the ground up. As the lunch concluded, Thorne produced his leather notebook once more. "My daughter, Clara, hasn't stopped talking about meeting you, Ms. Monroe. That autograph is now her most prized possession." He chuckled warmly. "She's even started researching Ascend Capital's portfolio companies. You've truly inspired her." Zara smiled genuinely. It was these personal connections, these moments of shared purpose and inspiration, that truly fueled her drive. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the public accolades, but about the quiet impact she could have, the minds she could subtly influence, the futures she could help shape. Days turned into weeks, and the consequences for Bartholomew Finch slowly, inexorably tightened their grip. His pitch decks, once lauded for their aggressive ambition, now seemed to lack the vital spark of conviction. He found himself increasingly isolated in his professional circles. The subtle chill in the air, the polite but firm rejections from potential investors, the lack of return calls from key industry figures, it all accumulated into a suffocating pressure. He tried to understand why. He replayed the scene on the plane endlessly in his mind, dissecting every word, every gesture. The revelation that Zara Monroe, the quiet, understated woman he had so casually dismissed, was in fact the architect of the very fund that underwrote Aurelia Holdings, was a bitter pill he struggled to swallow. He thought of the subtle cues he had missed, her impeccable, yet unbranded attire, the serene confidence in her posture, the quiet authority that Julian Thorne, a man of immense power, had instantly recognized. Bartholomew had been blinded by his own prejudices, by a narrow, outdated definition of what power and success should look like. He had expected flashy labels, overt displays of wealth, perhaps even an entourage. Zara Monroe represented a new paradigm, a quiet revolution in an industry steeped in tradition. His partner, a pragmatic individual named Victoria, eventually confronted him. "Bartholomew," she began, her voice firm but not unkind. "We're hitting a wall with funding. There's a whisper in the wind, a certain reluctance from the major players, especially those connected to Aurelia. Did something happen on that last flight?" Bartholomew, humbled and defeated, finally confessed the full, embarrassing story. He recounted his flippant remark, Thorne's unexpected entrance, and the agonizing request for an autograph. Victoria listened, her expression unreadable, then slowly shook her head. "Bartholomew," she said, her voice laced with a profound disappointment. "Zara Monroe isn't just a fund manager. She's a legend. Ascend Capital doesn't just manage money. They dictate trends. Offending her, even inadvertently, is like cutting off your own oxygen supply in the CA industry." The truth of her words hit him with the force of a physical blow. His reputation, carefully built over decades, was now tainted, not by financial mismanagement or strategic missteps, but by a casual, arrogant act of prejudice. He realized that Zara Monroe hadn't needed to actively punish him. Her mere indifference, her quiet turning away, was punishment enough. In the interconnected world of high finance, a reputation for insensitivity or a lack of respect could be a far more insidious and damaging blow than any direct confrontation. He spent weeks trying to salvage his relationships, attending industry events he usually avoided, humbling himself before former associates, all in a desperate attempt to repair the damage. He even considered a public apology, a grand gesture that might somehow atone for his blunder. But then he remembered Zara's quiet dignity, her absolute self-possession. A public display, he realized, would likely be seen by her as performative, an act of self-preservation rather than genuine contrition. She wasn't seeking an apology. She was simply moving forward, her gaze fixed on horizons he could no longer even perceive. Ultimately, Bartholomew Finch had to accept the painful truth. His venture, deprived of the critical capital needed to scale, began to flounder. He was forced to make difficult decisions, letting go of staff, downsizing operations, the bright flame of his ambition flickering precariously. The net worth seeding joke had, in a devastating twist of fate, accurately described his own plummeting professional value, albeit in a way he had never intended. Zara, hundreds of miles away, on another flight perhaps, or in a bustling boardroom across continents, remained blissfully unaware of Bartholomew Finch's spiraling predicament. Her mind was already on the next challenge, the next opportunity, the next strategic move in the intricate global chess game. The incident on the plane, while a momentary amusement, had served its purpose. It had reinforced her understanding of the world, highlighting the persistent biases that still permeated even the most progressive environments. But it was not a dwelling point. It was a data point. Her focus was on a new initiative at Ascend Capital, a global talent pipeline program designed to identify and mentor brilliant young minds from underserved communities, providing them with the resources and opportunities to thrive in the financial world. It was a long-term investment, one that wouldn't yield immediate financial returns, but would, she believed, reshape the industry's future, creating a more diverse, equitable, and ultimately, more innovative landscape. This was her true legacy, far beyond any specific investment or successful fund. She thought of Julian Thorne's daughter, Clara, and the spark of inspiration she had seen in the young girl's eyes. It was a reminder that influence wasn't just about financial power. It was about the quiet ripples created by example, by breaking barriers, by simply existing as a testament to what was possible. Her work was not just about numbers on a ledger. It was about the intricate, invisible threads that connected people, ideas, and ultimately, destinies. The story of Zara Monroe, the black CEO who quietly commanded the reins of an entire airline, who turned a condescending chuckle into a desperate plea for an autograph, became a quiet legend in certain exclusive circles. It was a tale whispered not for gossip, but as a cautionary lesson, a powerful reminder that true wealth and influence often reside in the most unexpected places, embodied by individuals whose quiet brilliance transcends all superficial judgments and preconceived notions. And in that, there was a profound, enduring power. Zara continued to break new ground, Ascend Capital growing into an even more formidable force under her astute leadership. Their investment portfolio diversified further, touching every corner of the globe, consistently delivering exceptional returns while adhering to their core principles of ethical and sustainable growth. She became a sought-after speaker at prestigious economic forums, her insights on global markets and responsible investing quoted widely, her influence undeniable. Yet, Despite her growing prominence, she maintained her characteristic humility, her focus always on the work, on the tangible impact of Ascend Capital's strategies, rather than on personal acclaim. She never forgot the lessons learned, both in the early struggles of her career and in moments like the incident on the plane. They had forged her resilience, honed her perception, and reinforced her conviction that authentic leadership was about far more than just financial acumen. It was about integrity, foresight, and the quiet courage to challenge entrenched norms. The memory of Bartholomew Finch, shrinking in his seat, served not as a source of triumph, but as a poignant reminder of the enduring power of perception and the vital importance of seeing beyond the superficial. Her relationship with Julian Thorne blossomed into a strong professional alliance, built on mutual respect and a shared vision for the future of finance. They collaborated on several groundbreaking initiatives, particularly in the realm of impact investing, channeling capital towards projects that addressed global challenges like climate change and poverty alleviation, proving that profitability and purpose were not mutually exclusive. Thorne often remarked to his inner circle that Zara Monroe was not just the smartest person he knew, but also the most ethically grounded, a rare combination in their high-stakes industry. He would occasionally tell the story of the autograph, always with a chuckle, not to disparage anyone, but to illustrate the invaluable lesson of underestimation. Zara sometimes wondered about Bartholomew Finch. She harbored no ill will, but a quiet curiosity lingered about whether he had learned his lesson, whether the experience had forced him to reevaluate his own biases and assumptions. She hoped it had, not for her sake, but for his own growth and for the broader good of the industry. Her vision for the future was one where talent, regardless of background, could flourish unimpeded, where meritocracy truly reigned supreme. As the years passed, Ascend Capital became a beacon, a paradigm shift in the world of investment. Other firms began to emulate their model, adopting more rigorous ESG criteria, recognizing the long-term value in sustainable practices. Zara had not just built a successful fund. She had subtly, yet profoundly, reshaped an entire industry, shifting its focus from purely extractive profit to a more expansive definition of wealth creation that included societal and environmental well-being. Her greatest satisfaction came not from the astronomical figures on balance sheets, but from the quiet stories of impact. The rural communities empowered by new energy grids, the innovative startups bringing clean water solutions to developing nations, the talented young professionals from diverse backgrounds finding their stride in finance, often inspired by her own journey. Each of these stories was a testament to the power of capital, when wisely and ethically deployed, to transform lives and build a better world. Zara Monroe, the woman once subtly judged for her appearance in a first-class cabin, had not only paid for the very airline she flew on, but had fundamentally redefined what it meant to be a high-net-worth individual, not just in terms of wealth, but in terms of unwavering integrity, visionary leadership, and a legacy that transcended mere numbers, touching the lives of countless individuals and shaping the very fabric of the future. Her influence rippled outwards, a silent, powerful force, forever altering the landscape of global finance, one strategic, impactful decision at a time. The initial encounter on that flight had been a microcosm of her life's journey, an initial dismissal, followed by an undeniable revelation of her true, formidable power, culminating in a recognition that was both humbling and transformative for all who witnessed it. And as for Bartholomew Finch, his career never fully recovered. A cautionary tale whispered in the hallowed halls of finance about the perils of underestimating true greatness, especially when it chooses to dress in quiet, unpretentious confidence. The autograph, framed and displayed in Julian Thorne's study, remained a silent, powerful emblem of a paradigm shift. Her path hadn't been without its internal struggles. The isolation that often accompanied such singular success, the weight of immense responsibility, and the constant demand for peak performance could, at times, be overwhelming. Zara found solace in her morning meditations, in long solitary runs that cleared her mind, and in the quiet moments she spent mentoring young women aspiring to enter finance. She understood the importance of creating pathways, of opening doors that had once been firmly shut. Her resilience was not just a professional asset, but a deeply personal one, forged in the fires of past challenges. She remembered a particularly arduous period during the global financial crisis, when markets were in free fall and even the most seasoned investors panicked. While others sold off assets in a desperate scramble, Zara, guided by her meticulous research and an almost serene conviction, had strategically acquired undervalued companies with strong, ethical foundations, seeing opportunities where others saw only despair. It was a risky move, one that drew skepticism from within her own firm, but her unwavering belief in the long-term trajectory of these businesses, combined with her deep understanding of their inherent value, ultimately paid off spectacularly, cementing Ascend Capital's reputation for not just resilience, but also unparalleled foresight. That period had been a crucible, refining her leadership and solidifying her resolve. The memory of the flight, now years in the past, occasionally resurfaced, but less as a source of vindication and more as an anecdote, a small, illustrative vignette of a world slowly, grudgingly, but inevitably changing. Zara Monroe had become a symbol, not just of Black excellence or female empowerment, but of a new era of leadership that prioritized substance over superficiality, impact over ego, and quiet strength over boisterous display. Her legacy was etched not just in the financial returns of her fund, but in the countless lives she had touched, the barriers she had dismantled, and the profound shift she had initiated in the very culture of the financial world. And that, she knew, was a worth far greater than any number on a balance sheet. The world had begun to recognize that true net worth wasn't just about assets. It was about the indelible mark left on the world, the positive change ignited by a singular vision, a relentless drive, and unshakable commitment to integrity. And in that realization, Zara Monroe, the woman who had quietly owned the very airline she flew on, stood as a towering, inspiring testament to what was truly possible. She was not just a CEO, she was an architect of a more equitable, more prosperous, and more conscious future, her journey a beacon for generations to come. The initial encounter on the Aurelia Airlines flight, a seemingly mundane cross-country trip, had inadvertently served as a stark microcosm of the systemic prejudices Zara Monroe had navigated throughout her extraordinary career. It wasn't the first time she had faced subtle, or even overt, dismissiveness rooted in superficial judgment. What set this instance apart, however, was the immediate and public reversal of perception, facilitated by an unwitting Julian Thorne. This event, now part of her personal lore, subtly underscored the constant re-education of those who populated the upper echelons of the corporate world. Zara often reflected on the subtle microaggressions that had colored her ascent. The surprised expressions when she articulated complex financial strategies, the double takes when she confidently led a room of seasoned, predominantly male, executives, the casual assumptions about her role, often mistaking her for an assistant or a junior associate. Each incident, rather than deterring her, had merely hardened her resolve, sharpening her focus. She understood that her presence alone was a statement, a challenge to the established order. She wasn't just breaking glass ceilings, she was dismantling the very foundations of antiquated thinking, brick by painstaking brick. Her personal journey was one of relentless self-improvement, fueled by an insatiable curiosity and an unshakable belief in her own capabilities. Growing up, financial literacy wasn't a casual dinner table topic. Her parents, hard-working educators, had instilled in her a profound appreciation for learning and an unwavering work ethic. Zara devoured books on economics, devouring complex theories and market histories with an almost obsessive zeal. She often spent evenings in the quiet corners of libraries, long after her peers had left, tracing the intricate patterns of global trade and investment, seeing not just numbers, but stories of human endeavor and innovation. Her breakthrough into the fiercely competitive world of finance had not come through privileged connections or inherited wealth. It was a path carved by sheer merit, by consistently outperforming expectations and demonstrating a visionary understanding of market dynamics that often eluded even the most experienced analysts. Her early years were marked by grueling hours, intense pressure, and the constant need to prove herself, not just competent, but exceptional. She recalled nights spent poring over spreadsheets until dawn, fueled by strong coffee and an unyielding determination to master every nuance of her craft. The financial world was a relentless meritocracy, she had learned. And while entry might be biased, sustained success was a brutal, objective arbiter of talent. Ascend Capital, the firm she had founded and meticulously nurtured, was a testament to this philosophy. It was built on the premise that a diverse team, bringing varied perspectives and experiences, could collectively identify opportunities and mitigate risks that a monolithic, homogeneous group might overlook. Her hiring practices were revolutionary for the industry, prioritizing cognitive diversity, emotional intelligence, and a genuine commitment to ethical practices alongside traditional qualifications. She believed that true innovation sprang from varied viewpoints, from a melting pot of ideas, rather than a monoculture. This approach, initially met with skepticism by some traditionalists, quickly proved its worth through Ascend's consistently superior returns and its reputation as a magnet for top talent from unconventional backgrounds. The dynamic between Zara and Julian Thorne had evolved significantly since that fated flight. Their initial professional respect had deepened into a genuine collaborative partnership. Thorne, a shrewd and forward-thinking businessman, recognized in Zara not just a brilliant investor, but a kindred spirit who understood that the future of capitalism lay in conscious, sustainable growth. Their regular lunches, far from being mere networking opportunities, became intellectual sparring sessions, deep dives into geopolitical shifts, technological disruptions, and the evolving role of capital in shaping global societies. Ms. Monroe, Thorne had once remarked during a particularly intense discussion about blockchain technology, "You have an uncanny ability to see 5 moves ahead in a game where most people are struggling to see the next one. It's truly remarkable." Zara, ever modest, had simply smiled. "It's not magic, Mr. Thorne. It's about a relentless pursuit of data, combined with a willingness to challenge assumptions and embrace long-term vision, even when it feels counterintuitive in the short term. The market often rewards patience and conviction." End quote. Their collaborative initiatives extended beyond traditional investments. They had recently co-sponsored a major philanthropic endeavor aimed at providing financial literacy education to underprivileged youth in urban centers. This project, born from Zara's deep commitment to community upliftment and Thorne's desire to leverage his firm's resources for social good, quickly gained national recognition. Zara believed that empowering individuals with knowledge was the most sustainable form of investment, yielding returns not just in dollars, but in human potential. Meanwhile, Bartholomew Finch's world continued its slow, agonizing descent. The initial sting of humiliation had long since festered into a deep-seated bitterness. His attempts to re-engage with the financial elite were met with a polite, impenetrable wall. The subtle whispers about his incident on the Aurelia flight had solidified into a cautionary tale, a social contagion that made other investors wary. No one wanted to be associated with someone perceived as lacking the fundamental respect for power, especially when that power was quietly wielded by someone like Zara Monroe. He found himself increasingly isolated, his phone ringing less frequently, his invitations to exclusive industry events drying up. Gerald, his former golf buddy and confidant, now actively avoided him, responding to his calls with curt texts or voicemails that offered thinly veiled excuses. The startup he had poured his life savings into, once a shining beacon of his ambition, became a constant source of financial hemorrhage. The venture capital world, once his oyster, had now slammed shut, its doors firmly bolted against him. Bartholomew's days were now a monotonous cycle of desperate, unanswered calls and futile attempts to revive dead leads. He'd spend hours staring at his phone, waiting for a call that never came. His once impeccably tailored suits now hung a little looser, a visible manifestation of his dwindling prospects. He found himself replaying the flight scene in his mind, not with the sharp agony of fresh humiliation, but with a dull, persistent ache of regret. He saw Zara's calm face, Thorne's deferential bow, and his own foolish, boisterous laughter. He understood, with a clarity that was almost unbearable, the depth of his misjudgment. It wasn't just that he had been wrong about her financial standing. He had been wrong about her essence. He had seen only what he expected to see, blinded by his own entrenched biases, and the cost was proving to be catastrophic. His wife, a patient but increasingly worried woman, urged him to consider other paths, to step away from the financial world entirely. But Bartholomew, stubborn and proud, clung to the fading remnants of his former glory, convinced that he could still somehow reverse the tide. He refused to acknowledge the fundamental shift in the industry, the rise of a new guard represented by Zara Monroe, a guard that valued substance and ethical leadership over old boy networks and superficial bravado. Zara, by contrast, continued to ascend. Her work at Ascend Capital garnered international accolades. She was invited to Davos, to speak at the World Economic Forum, to advise governments on sustainable development initiatives. Her face, once overlooked in first-class cabins, now graced the covers of prestigious financial magazines, not for her personal wealth, but for her profound impact and transformative vision. The articles, however, always emphasized her quiet strength, her strategic brilliance, and her unwavering commitment to ethical investing, a stark contrast to the often sensationalized profiles of other financial titans. She remained grounded, however, refusing to let the accolades inflate her ego. Her life was still structured around disciplined routines, early morning meditations, rigorous analytical work, and dedicated time for mentoring the next generation of diverse financial leaders. She remembered the fierce battles she had fought, not just against market volatility, but against the systemic inequalities that had once sought to exclude her. These memories were not a source of bitterness, but a wellspring of empathy and resolve, driving her commitment to creating a more inclusive and equitable financial ecosystem. One crisp autumn morning, as Zara sat in her minimalist, art-filled office overlooking the city skyline, Lena, her assistant, buzzed her. "Ms. Monroe, Bartholomew Finch is here. He insisted on waiting in the lobby for just a few minutes of your time, without an appointment." Zara paused, her gaze drifting to the panoramic view. She hadn't heard his name in months, almost years. A faint shadow of her earlier amusement touched her lips. "Send him up, Lena. 10 minutes." Bartholomew Finch, visibly aged, his once crisp suit now looking a little rumpled, stood awkwardly in Zara's impeccably designed office. He was thinner, his shoulders stooped, his eyes holding a haunted, weary look. He wasn't the boisterous, self-assured man from the plane. He was a man stripped bare by consequences. "Ms. Monroe," he began, his voice barely a whisper, devoid of its former bombast. I don't expect anything. I just needed to say, face to face, how truly sorry I am for my behavior on that flight. It was inexcusable. My assumptions, my prejudices, they cost me everything. But, more importantly, they were a profound disrespect to you. I learned a bitter lesson, Ms. Monroe. A truly bitter lesson." His voice cracked, the raw emotion of his regret finally breaking through his carefully constructed facade. Zara listened, her expression unreadable. She saw a man genuinely broken, stripped of his arrogance. There was no triumph in her gaze, only a quiet, almost sympathetic understanding. "Mr. Finch," she said softly, her voice devoid of judgment. "Your words on that flight were indeed dismissive, but perhaps they were also a reflection of a wider, systemic issue that many still grapple with. The financial world is changing, Mr. Finch. It demands a broader perspective, a deeper understanding of human capital, and a commitment to inclusivity that goes beyond mere lip service." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "I didn't actively seek to punish you, Mr. Finch. My focus is always forward, on growth, on building. But actions have consequences, especially in an interconnected industry where trust and respect are paramount. Your own actions created the ripples you're experiencing." End quote. Bartholomew nodded, his eyes cast downwards. "I know, and I accept that. I couldn't move on without acknowledging my grave error directly to you." He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a slightly crumpled, well-worn business card. "I'm pursuing a new venture now, a small consultancy helping struggling startups with their initial structuring, focusing on ethical funding practices. It's a very different path." He looked up, a glimmer of fragile hope in his eyes. "If there's ever anything, any small way I could perhaps be of service, even in an advisory capacity, perhaps pro bono." Zara took the card. "I appreciate your sincerity, Mr. Finch. The commitment to ethical funding is indeed a critical path forward. I commend you for embracing that. I cannot promise anything specific, but I will keep your offer in mind. Everyone deserves the opportunity for growth and redemption, provided they genuinely learn from their missteps." She stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Bartholomew, understanding the silent cue, rose as well, a flicker of something akin to gratitude in his weary eyes. "Thank you, Ms. Monroe. Truly, thank you for even seeing me." He turned and slowly walked out, leading Zara in the silent expanse of her office, the city skyline stretching endlessly before her. Zara stood for a long moment, the business card in her hand. The encounter with Bartholomew Finch was a poignant reminder of the journey she had undertaken, the battles fought and won, not with aggression, but with quiet competence and unyielding integrity. It was a testament to the transformative power of humility and the enduring impact of a single ill-judged remark. Her personal trajectory had always been about more than just personal success. It was about creating a ripple effect, a positive current that would reshape the very landscape of finance, making it more just, more inclusive, and more truly reflective of the diverse world it served. The seat she occupied, the influence she wielded, wasn't just reserved for high net worth. It was reserved for high impact, high integrity, and a vision that stretched far beyond the confines of a first-class cabin towards a future built on principles of true value. She placed Bartholomew's card on her desk, not dismissing it, but acknowledging it as a symbol of growth, of a lesson painfully learned. She wouldn't actively seek to help him, but she wouldn't actively hinder him either. His future was now his own to forge, free from the biases that had once clouded his judgment. Zara Monroe, however, continued her ascent, her quiet power radiating outwards, shaping markets, influencing policies, and inspiring a new generation of leaders to look beyond the superficial, to truly see the worth in every individual, and to understand that the deepest wells of influence were often found in the most unexpected and dashing, unassuming places. Her story wasn't just about a moment of public vindication. It was about the enduring power of quiet revolution, a narrative of transformation that continued to unfold. One strategic decision, one impactful investment, one quiet act of leadership at a time. The echoes of a self-satisfied chuckle on a plane had faded, replaced by the resonant hum of an empire built on foresight, fairness, and an unshakable belief in the power of true worth. The subsequent months and years saw Ascend Capital solidify its position not merely as a leading investment firm, but as a thought leader in the realm of ethical and sustainable finance. Zara frequently found herself on panels, not just discussing market trends, but advocating for systemic change within the financial industry. She championed greater diversity in leadership, robust ESG reporting standards, and the integration of social impact metrics into traditional financial valuations. Her voice carried significant weight, not because she was loud, but because her results spoke volumes, proving that her seemingly unconventional approach delivered superior returns alongside meaningful societal benefit. She oversaw the launch of a significant new fund within Ascend Capital, specifically dedicated to investing in women-led startups in STEM fields, recognizing the immense untapped potential in this demographic. This initiative, driven by her personal passion for empowering women in male-dominated industries, rapidly became a benchmark for other investment firms. It wasn't just about charity, Zara emphasized. It was about smart economics, about recognizing overlooked talent pools and fostering innovation that traditional funding models often missed. Her days remained intensely demanding, a complex dance between managing a vast portfolio, nurturing her team, engaging with global policymakers, and still finding moments for personal reflection. The luxury of the first-class cabin was no longer a rare treat, but a regular necessity, a mobile office where she could continue her relentless pursuit of knowledge and strategy. Yet, she never took it for granted. Each flight, each meeting, each interaction was an opportunity to learn, to influence, and to subtly shift the narratives that governed the world of wealth. Julian Thorne continued to be a staunch ally and advocate. He often credited Zara, both publicly and privately, with fundamentally changing Aurelia Holdings' long-term investment strategy, steering it towards a more resilient and ethically grounded future. He was particularly proud of his daughter, Clara, who, years later, had indeed pursued a career in finance, often citing Zara Monroe as her primary inspiration. Clara, now a rising star in a different, progressive investment firm, carried the lessons of that airplane encounter, understanding that true power often resided in understated confidence and uncompromising integrity. She meticulously followed Ascend Capital's moves, seeing Zara not just as a business leader, but as a guiding light. Bartholomew Finch's consultancy, while small, slowly began to find its footing. He focused on providing genuine ethical advice to struggling startups, emphasizing long-term sustainability over quick, speculative gains. The arrogant bravado that had once defined him was gone, replaced by a quiet humility and a genuine desire to add value. He never approached Zara again for direct assistance, but he occasionally sent her an email, offering an insightful article on ethical investing or a thoughtful commentary on market trends, never asking for a reply, simply sharing. Zara's assistant, Lena, would occasionally flag these emails. Zara would read them, a faint, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement, a silent recognition of his quiet, continuing journey of redemption. He was rebuilding, not a financial empire, but his own integrity, one step at a time. The legacy of Zara Monroe was far more expansive than any single anecdote or financial success. It was embedded in the shifting landscape of global finance, in the increasing prioritization of purpose alongside profit, in the growing recognition of diverse leadership, and in the countless young people, particularly women and minorities, who now saw a clear, illuminated path to the highest echelons of an industry that had once seemed impenetrable. Her quiet revolution continued, not with loud pronouncements, but with consistent action, unwavering vision, and the profound, enduring power of leading by example. The airplane incident, once a moment of personal embarrassment for one man, had become a pivotal, illustrative tale in the larger, unfolding story of how true worth ultimately defines itself, transcending all superficial judgments. It was a testament that a seat in first class, indeed, any seat of influence, was truly reserved for those who possessed not just high net worth, but high character and unwavering vision.